I have often wondered what I would do, when Wendy and I move, probably next year, and let's say, my son takes over the business and I disappear, and I don't have this, I've got an antenna field here, and if I didn't have this, when I'm desperately keen to keep it, and I thought to myself, what would I actually do? Well, I have said to the landlord, if I give up this unit, can I spend some money and buy one of those big sheds, insulated sheds? We'll put it in the woods and we'll just put the cage. Give me some mains, right?
Yeah.
And I'll do that because I remote control my shack most of the time. I think that's it there. The ACOM amplifier is missing at the moment. But last night, for instance, I was, it was about 9:30 and I thought it was a bit early to go to bed, and so I pressed some buttons on my phone. I can fire all this up at home. I'm about 7 miles away. Fired it all up, and I was just cruising, chatting to the odd person on 40 metres. But anyway, let's say I genuinely retire, right, and I don't have this, then we discussed a topic which was if I had to do it all over again, right, and I only had, your average UK plot, what the hell would I do? That's the point, right? Because I've got a little bit of fun for you, is that a lot of people say to me, oh, my end fed, went AWOL the other day, or my half wave, my dipole fell down, or I had a little vertical hanging off a tree and it's broken, whatever else. I am convinced that actually the number of antennas you have gives you, every time you double the amount of antennas, it's like the inverse square law, right? So if you've got two aerials, if you've got one aerial antenna, then you've got a 1 in 100 chance of it going wrong. If you've got two antennas, it seems to be about 1 in 20. Three antennas. By the time I've got I think 10 different antenna feeds to hear. I've got a problem every bloody week. I can't get out of it. But anyway, right. So I thought it would be a fun, if you like, a thought experiment. And I thought to myself, if I did move, what would I actually do? You know what I mean? Hopefully this might inspire you, because I've actually done some deep thinking, because most of the time, a lot of us, if you've been in this game for a while, you already have some old radios and maybe a new radio. I think the amount of money we all spend on radios is ridiculous. But let's say we just had to start from scratch. I mean, what would we do? So we'd need a radio to start with. And I just thought, well, what radio would I... Let's say, we got hit by lightning, like a massive fire, whatever else, and I said to my son, I'm off, what would I buy? Well, actually, I would buy a bit of a weird thing, probably a very old, quite cheap TS990, because you can pick them up for about 3,500, but there's a couple of things I particularly like, but I can't get on anything else, whether it be a Flex or an ICOM or a Yaesu. I just can't get it. But anyway, I can cover that on a question another day. But I have used everything from like a FT1000 MP. Now, that is a very nice radio. It's a Yaesu, what I call big knob, little knob. So you've got the main VFO, but you've got a second receiver. It's not quite as good. And I confirmed last night, because I knew I was doing this talk, I happened to bump into someone with an FT1000 MP. And I confirmed to him, can you run like 20 metres on the left VFO and let's say 15 metres on the right VFO? And he said yes. Now, the laugh is, an FT1000 MP or a field might actually be going up in price now. But ignoring that, I'll come back to 2FO radios in a bit. So I was just thinking, we'll need a radio and a computer, because very rarely I do actually speak to, normally it's some really old American fellow. Yeah, hello, mate, how you doing, buddy? No, I got a paper log here. Who don't have a computer at all. But most people have got a computer just for basic logging. And I don't really care what logging software you're using. It could be, Log40M, Station Master, QSO Director, N1MM I use, which is a contest logger. But I use one of the inbuilt contests. It's called DX, just for general purpose logging, you see. I use that. And you can export ADIF files and send it to QRZ and all that stuff. Anyway. So I'd get a cheap computer you can get off eBay, like a Dell, whatever, Optiplex or something. Because in the modern day, we only need a USB port these days to go into the back from the computer to the radio. I was checking with ChatGPT, when did USB ports on the back of radios become de rigueur, And apparently it was roughly about 2015. Icon were the first, Kenwood and Yaesu followed. But certainly in the last 10 years, all radios that you buy have a USB port in the back that you plug into the radio, and that gives you the CAT interface. In other words, when I spin the radio here, my log knows exactly where I am. And also, if I want to do any sort of data, FT8 or anything else, that carries the audio as well. Because before then, we needed something called, I don't know, there's all sorts of products, but one product was a signal link, it was called.
I remember,
you plugged it into your microphone socket. You had to remember to turn the processor off so that your computer could come through this and straight into your mic jack, because that was the only place you could take the audio in. Oh, there was Microham and all sorts of people, jumped on the bandwagon. But anyway, and that was for both voice keying and voice and CW, and you could spend a fortune on all this, right? But in the main, we kind of bypassed that now. We're straight, we've got a straight thing. So I think, well, what radio would, let's say I'm on a budget now, right? Now, funnily enough, we all know the expression, and humour me, because you might be new at this, I don't know. But there's something called a shack in a box. And a shack in a box generally was HF, which was like 160 metres to 10. And very often HF rigs, certainly over the last 15 years, they started slotting 6 metres in there as well. And a shack in the box normally had 2 and 70 as well. So 2 metres, 70 centimetres. Now, the last, quite not in high pit, and I've got 2 of them on the shelf up here. All right, I've got a pair of TS 2000s, which I don't know why I've got them, but anyway, they don't have a USB on the back, so I couldn't use it for data and all that sort of stuff. Well, I could use it for data, but I'd have to put a serial port in. But anyway, TS 2000, I used to think was a great radio, although I gave it a really terrible review once on EHAM because I used it in a contest, and it did work very well, but on 40 metres, you got some huge Russian using some, ex-military 20 kilowatt transmitter, and I could be 20 kilohertz away, and my signal meter would just would just die. I have since learnt, dial as much attenuation in as you can, dial back on the RF gain, and I did that at the weekend. I did 20 hours here on the IOTA contest. I ran as much attenuation, and my waterfall it looked like a really quiet day. Yeah, it was 40 metres and it was rammed. Anyway, that was a technique. I'll gradually get out to the garden, right? Because where the signal comes to and how it gets to your radio is really important. But anyway, if you're on a budget, I would pick something over the last 10 years that had a USB port. And then, of course, we need some coax to get out in the backyard. Sorry, you're English. I'm so used to talking to Americans. We have back gardens in the UK and the Americans have backyards. So let's talk about this because it's really, really important. Let's just only take 40 metres for a minute. So 40 metres, it's like 2 completely separate bands. During the day, or early morning and in the evening, for a general purpose 100-watt station with a low-to-the-ground dipole. To be honest, it's a really difficult job to cock this up. Anything with a bit of wire on the end of it that your radio says, oh, I'm putting out 100 watts, will just work. And you'll be able to speak to Joe in Brighton and Fred in Manchester, assuming there's propagation. You just will, right? And that is what I call not quite NVIS, but it is. I've had a dipole as low as 4 feet, 1.2 metres off the ground, fence height, and between fence height and about 20 feet or 4 or 5 metres. To be honest, I can't tell the blooming difference. All right, Papa Alpha, Delta Limas, the French stations, Italians. our friends in Ireland and the Northern Ireland and Spain and so on, we've got this. I don't know what it is. I'd get to get the map out, but I don't know. Let's say it's 500 miles. You've got this single skip bump, right? And it doesn't matter how high or low your antenna is, you'll just do it. And by the way, an inverted V, a regular inverted V, is like, oh, I'll throw that over that branch, It's almost omnidirectional, okay? So you'll just get out. That's 40 meters, what I call daytime, right? I do appreciate there is something called grey line and nighttime, right? 40 meters, and this is it's a bit like 80, very specialist. You need a different antenna now if you want kind of Cyprus, Middle East, or New York, Florida going the other way, right? New York, Florida is actually quite easy because the only thing in the way of us is the Atlantic, and that gives us great bounce, okay? Now we're going to need, assuming you can't afford a 100-foot tower and a 2 or 3 element Yagi, we need a low angle. So we're going to need a vertical, right? A vertical for nighttime work, nighttime. So this is kind of midnight to 5, right? And the laugh is, if you're not awake between midnight and 5, don't bother, right? Don't get me wrong, on the contest this weekend, a couple of times I ran a 2 VFO radio, one antenna in that ear and one antenna in that ear, and I can tell what's going on. Vertical dipole, for instance, I can hear people and how far they are. But we'll do 2 VFOs in a minute. So 40 meters is an odd one out, right? You can transmit on a vertical, but you will find you will be louder on a low to the ground dipole for probably 95% of all your contacts. Unless you're particularly wanting to stay up till 3 in the morning and get Japan. There we are, on 40. Right. And I'll come up with my strategy, and these are the reasons behind it in a minute. So 40 is an odd one out. You kind of need 2 antennas. You need your low to ground dipole and you need a vertical if you want long DX now. Right. I'm not saying you can't get DX at 8 o'clock at night. I've done it. About 7:30, I've got VK's short path. In other words, about 45 degrees from here on the Great Circle map, between 45 and 90. And I planned it all, and I looked at what do you call it? Looked at the propagation maps and everything else. In the back of Radcom, if that'll settle down, you always get one of these. I need to make a video about this, actually, because some people say, oh, yeah, I've seen these, but I don't know how it works. It's actually quite easy. But you can go, oh, my God, 40 metres, Sydney. Oh, there's like a 10% chance of me getting that on a 100-watt radio, right, with a dipole. With a vertical, you do even better. Right, let's move up now from between 20 metres and 10 metres, or 30 metres and 10 metres. 30 metres is very much like, as we probably know, a little bit like 40 metres. It's got a bit of 20 in it too, right? So it can give you really nice surprises. But ignoring 30 in a minute, I'm just staying on SSB. Let's go 20, because on 30 metres, we're not allowed voice, right? Some parts of the world are, which really annoys me. It would be fantastic for the International Amateur, the ITU, whatever it's called, to go, let's give them 100 kilohertz. Nobody's using it. And we could all have 100 kilohertz of 30 metres, 10.1 to 10.2, whatever else. But anyway, so let's get between 20 and 10 metres. I was amazed. I was at the Telford Club last Tuesday or Wednesday night, and I put up one of my antennas, actually, which is a ground-mounted vertical, and it was 2015, 2017, well, it was 40, all the way up to 10, and I got a perfect tune on 6. So I had all the bands from 40 up on a vertical. I was amazed. I was getting out all around Europe on a 10-metre vertically grounded antenna. And I used to think, we have to be way up high. Now, we were on not a mountain or anything. Apparently, it was a bit of a plateau. Nice field, load of radials. Really short radials, 7 feet long, 2 metres. I had 32 of them, little short things. And I think I made contact on every band. Oh, gosh, I've made a video about that, but I've never edited it. We'll get around to doing that. But I had some fantastic, even on 6 metres. So, but that's the point, you see, because if you look at a far field plot on a vertical antenna, you'll find out that it's the highest gain is not on average ground now, not by the sea. On average ground is about 20 degrees, whereas our low to the ground dipole, our best gain is right at the top, up and down. It wants that 500 miles. Dum. So vertical is going that way, and low to the ground dipole is going that way. Right. So then there's another trick to all this, because a lot of us suffer from noise. And a lot of people say, oh, verticals are more noisy than dipoles. I think we need to take a step back from that. I really do, because if our low to the ground dipole is great at receiving signals coming very high, right? And our vertical is very good at receiving signals going that way, then wouldn't it be, on the logic front, they say, well, vertical is going to pick up more local interference because it's designed for low angle, right? And the chances are, if your garden and your next door neighbour's fairy lights and fridge and all that stuff, well, it'll be perfectly placed to hear, particularly on 40, maybe 20. 40 can be a nightmare for some people. Perfectly placed just to pick it up. Ah, right. So what can we do about it? Now, I made a video about this, and I'm not going to slate it. I'm not going to go on about that or play the video. But there's something called a loop on the ground. It's pennies, right? And we've all got, an old reel of cheap wire knocking around or whatever else. And you can hide this, and no one will ever see it. Loop on the ground is a little, I can't remember the spec. It's a by binocular cord ferrite. Right? It's like a little transformer. You can buy them, $5, maybe £10 or whatever else, with a BNC or an SO239 on the side. And you put 15 feet by 15 feet. I know that's American money, but I don't know what that is, 3.5 meters or something. Square, or a circle, doesn't really matter. Put it on the ground, let the grass grow, and no one will ever see it again. That, and I proved it, that is such a superb and super low noise antenna for picking up anything really on 40, 80 and 160. Fantastic. Now, the thing is, the signal is blooming low, right? But on our radios, we've got a preamp button, which is, 15, 16, 17 dB. So you leave the radio wide open, take off all the attenuation, all the RF gain, stick the preamp on, and you'll find signals 5.9 plus 10, right? With the preamp. I never run a preamp on 40 meters. I used to have all that crashing and all that stuff. But 40, 80, 160, you've now got a super low noise receive. Now, most radios, half-decent radios, including the ICOM 7300 Mark II, and there's a hack for a 7300 Mark I, where you can get a cheap piece of coax to the back of the radio and put it in the receive socket. And then you can transmit and receive on your main antenna. Of course you can. But you can then press a button. Can't remember where mine is. I got too many buttons on this one. And say, there it is. I only want to receive off my receive antenna. So when I tick the transmit, I'm transmitting on whatever I want, my vertical, my dipole, whatever else. But I want a super low noise, really comfortable receive. So I hit the receive antenna. So now when I'm receiving, I want to leave that off. When I'm receiving, it's so comfortable. It's really nice. And you could do that on a single VFO, relatively cheap radio. Where am I getting all this? Because, again, if I went to my new home or whatever else, the first thing I'd put down, before I put any transmission down, I'd probably lay 3 coax out. The cheapest coax I could find, not quite the cheapest, but a sort of 5mm or 7mm kind of Messian Poloni, air, or SSB Electronics had the air cell, and then you had the flex, EcoFlex, I can't remember what it's called. The Messian Poloni, they do a 5 and a 7mm coax. No power going through it. You just got a reasonable braid. You don't want to be sucking in, a lot of noise. lay that out. I would lay and 2 transmission lines. Well, maybe three. I would have one for a low to the ground dipole, because even small houses, you've got enough room to be able to put a horseshoe around the top of the fence post on 40 metres. No one ever see it. All right, a dipole. All right. You can make that a fan dipole, by the way, by being creative. You can fold the ends back on 80 metres. If you fold the ends all the way back, you need 12-metre legs. But even then, 12-metre legs folded back, you could probably squeeze 80 metres in. And then I would have another one for my vertical. To start with, it would be a test vertical. It would be 4.95-metre long piece of wire going to the centre conductor of my coax, and I would put a load of short radials, scatter them all out, and I get on 20 metres on my vertical, just to see, like, was it pointless transmitting and receiving from here or not? And then I would have my 3 coax, my cheek coax, my 40 and 80 metre coax, and then something for my vertically polarised. I'm not into 10 to 12 metres with a hex beam, right? Your neighbours are likely to have a fit. I'm just talking about simple wire hanging off a tree. Obviously, if you wanted something better, you could buy one of my products, or make one, whatever. But that's where I go. You can go up from that. The trouble is, as we discussed earlier on, we're into the diminishing returns and the inverse square law, where, you could have, I'll have a loop as well, and I'll have a mono, I have a phased array for 17-metre band. Now you're into either multiple coax, or you've got to run one of those Genius 8x2. I bought one of these. So you can two coax lines, and you can have 8 antennas then. I mean, it's a few pounds, but, I'm just, as you want to upgrade, if I started again, And then Wendy will be saying, like, you got more, you have to put that out on in the shed, And I'm saying to Tom, MM0RMY, because he's moved up to Scotland, I'm trying to suggest to him, because he's now 4, 5, 6 coax lines, just mate, you need one of these. You've got your loop on the ground, you've got loads to the ground dipole, he's got a DX commander, he's got a hex beam coming. You run out, how much coax do you want coming into the shack with switches and everything else? So next thing is that if you can afford it, and I honestly don't know how much an FT 1000 MP, kind of a scrappy one that works. FT 1000. No, that's somebody after me. About £1,000. About £1,100, £1,200. They're probably going up every year now. In the menu on most machines, on the big machines, like most of the flagships are 2 VFO radios. Even the 7610, it doesn't look like it is, but it is 2 VFO radio. You can hit a button to say, on my second VFO, right, anything I do on the main VFO, just track it. Just pretend that you're locked to me. So you can swizzle around on your main VFO, and your second VFO will follow you. Which means you can have a loop on the ground on your right ear, because you can... Oh, that's loud, isn't it? On the right ear. And you can have your transmit antenna, for instance, on your left ear. Or the dipole on your right ear and your transmit on your left ear. Now, I was doing this all over the weekend. And it got to the point where I could almost tell where somebody was coming from. Now, I've got Yagis and all sorts of things, but I still run my vertical on my right ear, even if I've got high power and I'm beaming US, 1,000 watts, go ahead North America, and I'll get Hotel Alpha 5 off the back of the Yagi. I can hardly hear him. He comes clear as a bell in here. But that's the point. And I was doing this last night as well. I had my delta loop on this ear, which is the equivalent of a low to the ground dipole, and I had a vertical on my left ear, calling CQ, and the sort of Papa Alphas, Delta Limas were coming through more on the vertical, and then the GI zeros, and there was a guy in Oxford or something, much clearer on the other ear, because they're 2 different antennas, right? One was longer distance, and one is shorter distance. So if I had to do it all over again, and I was stuck for a bit of cash, I would not go to Costa Coffee for 3 months and save about 10,000 quid, right? And I'd save it, and I'd buy like a 1000 MP or something with 2 VFOs, because that stereo monitoring is just so delightful. You wouldn't believe it. Go on a couple of my go on my live. I've got 5 videos out from last weekend, 4 hours each, and just flick around until you hear me, maybe on 40 meters or 20 meters or something. Put a pair of headphones on and go, my God. Because the thing is, I mean, I'm a great CQer, all right? I mean, I find people as well. But if you like to call CQ and more than 3 people call, what you'll find is if you shut your eyes and you've got a compass point in front of you, it's like they separate out like this. I've got Delta Lima there, Hotel Alpha here, there's a golf station over here, right? There's a guy in France, Burgundy, whatever, Brittany. Here, you can literally hear them. They're spread out because depending on which antenna is picking up more of the high angle and more of the low angle. So there we are. So what is this about then? This is about buying a radio to your budget, and I think they all blooming work. I really do. I think we are completely paranoid about radios. I particularly like a TS990 because I've got some weird requirements on my remote, because I remote in quite a lot. I also want Vox on the data line when I talk. It's got to open up. iComs don't do that. And Yaesu, I'm not happy with the audio on the FTTX10. I can hear some bit of MP3, or I don't know what it is. I can hear something. I don't know. Or the 101 MP. I can just hear something. I'm left with Kenwood. And although it's over 10, 15 years old, I don't know how old the 990 is, but it's an old radio. But you can pick them up now for about 3.5, right? 3,250, with a dealer warranty. So you can probably do a better deal if you know someone. So there we are. At least 2 coax lines, one for receive, one for transmit, on a single VFO, and then just do what you can on your budget. And and rather than buying 20 meters and then 30 meters and then 40 meters of coax, just buy a 100-meter reel, buy a couple of reels of nice antenna wire for your antenna experiments, and get going that way. And that's all I wanted to say. Good night.
Oh, don't go quite yet, please. No, that is amazing. By the way, I've got to go say that is an amazing thing to do without PowerPoint slides and everything. I don't think we've ever had anybody present like that without any kind of prompts or anything. So well done on that. I mean it.